Throughout the Inspiher journey, we have mainly focused on the technical aspect of kickstarting one's career. In this special edition, we want to direct our attention to becoming a leader in this competitive industry. To enlighten us with her vast experience and boundless knowledge, we have with us a very special guest who has been in the business of molding leaders for years. We are delighted to introduce to you Divya Martyn Thyagarajan, who has played a key role in mentoring the future generation of women leaders in the tech space. She is currently working as a manager at Insync and uses her entrepreneurship skills to help companies develop their ideas into fruition. So, if you're looking to find insight on how to take your technical skills to the next level, she's your one-stop solution. Divya ma'am, it's our absolute pleasure to have you here today.
Thank you so much, Aritri.
Ma'am, during a session of our podcast, our guest had mentioned being a part of the Lead Like a Girl Fellowship. And you've been a mentor at that fellowship for a long time now. So can you tell us a little about its benefits and what are the characteristics you generally look for in an applicant?
Sure. So the Lead Like a Girl Fellowship actually started 4 years ago. And it was founded by a group of colleagues, myself included. And when we really thought of putting together a program for aspiring young women, our whole thought process was really looking at supporting women, young women especially, who really had a drive and a motivation to want to change the world around them for the better. And our whole idea was really, what if we could bring all of them together and just look at what kind of ideas emerge, what kind of connections do they make with each other, and in the process bring together a diverse group of young women, right? It's not only someone from a technology space or only someone with an accounting background. It's people from all arrays of interests who come working in the space of menstrual health and hygiene, or they are working in a corporate firm, or they are lawyers, or they are interested in making changes to policy. So the idea really was to bring together diverse minds and just look at what blossoms from it. And when we put them together for the Lead Like a Girl Fellowship, we also wanted to be able to provide as much support as they would need. So the fellowship program is not just training. Training is great. You learn a lot through training. But the focus in the Lead Like a Girl Fellowship is also to be able to give them the right kind of mentorship, the right kind of coaching. And coaching is different from mentorship, right? So giving them a space to really reflect, to really try and understand who they are at this point and what do they want to become, who do they want to become. And also look at how can we create peer groups who are there to support each other. Because everyone's on a different journey of their own. But if you have the right kind of support, that journey just is made a lot more easier. And another very important element of Lead Like a Girl was a practical aspect. Because every fellow, the Lead Like a Girl Fellowship, had to put together an impact project that impacted the lives of 100 other people around them in order to graduate. So it's not just about coming and attending a training session, but it is also about putting into practice what you've learned. And we very consciously wanted to push all the fellows a little bit outside of their comfort zone, right? And look at how would they, as emerging leaders in their space, look at challenges? How would they deal with challenges? And in that process, what do they learn about themselves? Because the whole philosophy that Lead Like a Girl is based on is that the more self-aware you are as a leader, the more impactful you can be. And so mindfulness is a huge tool in a way that we use throughout the fellowship program. There's a lot of focus on giving space for reflection, on becoming aware of what your vision is. How do you want to act every day, right? So giving a lot of focus on those everyday steps that you can take. That's the whole idea of Lead Like a Girl as well. And what are the characteristics we look at was the other question you asked, Aritri. Honestly, we thought, okay, let's look at not like I was saying, it was going to be a diverse group always, but we wanted someone who had at least graduated and had a degree behind their name. So we looked at young women who had graduated, and it could be anyone between the ages of 21 to 30. It didn't matter what degree they had done or where they had graduated, but we were looking at what were their aspirations for themselves. Because we know, like, a lot of young women have amazing ideas out there, and that's what we realized when we opened up the applications for Lead Like a Girl. We always had more people than we could take in who would apply for the fellowship program, and it was always such a struggle to pick out the right, because we were limited by resources. When we started Lead Like a Girl, we could only take in 20 people at that time, 20 fellows. And we had so many more applications. We had to say no to some really amazing young women at that point as well. So when we look at a person's application, we look at, of course, what have they, done before? Where have they studied? What have they achieved in whatever space that they are from? What has their life journey been like? So the application form asks all these questions. And then very importantly also, what do they want to do now? Right? How do they want to make a mark in the world is something that we are very, very particular about when we look at who we take in. Because the idea really is that leadership is not about, climbing a career ladder. It is not about what you can do for yourself, but leadership is about how do you change the world around you. Whatever that world is, your world is, it could be just the people around you. It doesn't need to be the entire world, but how do you make it a better place, essentially? And so that's the kind of person we look for as well, someone who's, motivated and driven to make that change.
I mean, that sounds like a wonderful experience, ma'am. I personally would love to apply for this later. And I mean, meeting with such a diverse group of women sharing ideas, I think that would be really beneficial to all of us out there.
Yes.
So, Lead Like a Girl, from what I understood, is about networking. And when it comes to networking, all of us know its importance, but sometimes we hesitate to reach out first. Like I myself, when I interact with seniors or colleagues, sometimes I might have a doubt in mind, but then I don't approach them with it thinking that it might be something obvious that I am missing, right? So can you give us some tips on how to network and build up confidence to approach others?
Sure. Like you said, one of the core tenets behind Lead Like a Girl as well is really how do you build the right kind of relationship of the right people around you who have your best interest in mind. And, one of the things we talk about is also that networking is essentially that. Networking has some people, assign a bad kind of vibe behind networking, thinking that networking is about only approaching someone if you want something from them, right? But the whole perspective that we want to shift that to is looking at how can we make networking essentially relationship building, and how do we identify the right person to network with as well, right? Because like you said, you might have some questions for your seniors and you don't know how to, you might think, they think, this might be a silly question. Right? Or you might feel bad that you'll be judged for asking this question. But then the idea really is how can you also step outside a little bit of your comfort zone and make a courageous attempt to connect with someone differently. So you could ask that question and, sometimes they might say, okay, why? Or you never know, right, how that other person is going to react. So the whole idea behind networking, I think, first is to really shift your mindset a little bit to think of how am I creating a relationship with whoever I'm asking this question from? What are certain things that I bring to the table which add value for that person? I might bring a perspective that person never thought of, right? And always going with that kind of mindset versus a, oh, what will they think of me mindset. Because each of us have a lot of value to add. Our own life experiences, the way we see the world is, each of us see the world very differently. And just acknowledging that my view of the world might be different, but that doesn't mean it's any lower than the other person's. Right? And being able to make that step courageously to really approach someone. Yeah, I think that would be a first step in building the right network.
I mean, I really agree with you. I think what I need to do is just stop overthinking and, like you said, take that courageous step to actually go out there and ask people instead of, contemplating all the scenarios in my head first.
And I think that voice in our head is our worst enemy sometimes. Because we will stop ourselves, forget anyone else stopping us from doing something. We stop ourselves so much more, right? And that voice in our head serves no purpose for us in that sense. Yeah.
That is so true. I really wish I could silence that voice sometimes, but then sometimes it also gives good advice. So it's just about being rational, I guess.
Yeah.
So while we're on this topic, it's also very important to have mentors and an ally when we enter a work environment. And we've had this discussion briefly before, but could you give us a little more insight on how freshers like me, who might just enter the industry in a year or two, how can we reach out to potential mentors and get them to trust us and connect to them?
Yeah. I think the whole thing about mentorship also is that first, what do you want to be mentored on? Because everyone has a different skill set that you can learn from. But what would benefit you to learn from, right? I remember when I've even thought of who do I reach out to about mentoring. A lot of the people tell us, that first identify what is a skill that you want to build. It could be you want to, become a better communicator, for example. Then if you've identified, okay, I want to improve on my communication skills, then the next step is looking at someone whose communication skills you admire. Right? There might be someone who's a senior or someone else, even completely not from where you are studying. And then you identify, okay, this person, I really like the way this person structures their conversation. It's very clear. There's a lot of clarity behind what they speak. And then you approach your mentor asking some specific questions. Because a lot of the time where a mentoring relationship goes wrong is when you don't even know what you want from a mentoring relationship. And so as a fresher, if you are going to be joining a company, whichever, very likely that you will be from a technology background or whatever background it might be, first identify what is it that you would like some advice on. It could be that you want advice on getting into a particular company, right? That is your dream company. Then can you identify a senior or someone else from your circle of influence, right? Or people that you might know who have done that, who have gotten into that company. And then you approach them with those specific questions. Now, that is just the first step. When you first are trying to make a connection with a mentor. After you have approached them and you have asked those questions, it's likely they will answer, and then the conversation kind of evolves from there, right? But to be able to approach a mentor and not make that mentor also feel like they're wasting their time with you and not to waste your own time, having a plan is very important. So knowing what you want to be mentored on, knowing who the right person is to mentor you about these things, and knowing why they are the right person, right? You might reach out to someone and say, you know what, I want to get into this company, and I know you're in there. They might not be the right person. Sometimes they might come back and say, you know what, I'm not the right person for this, but here's someone else who could help you. Right? So even that is fine, but knowing why you're reaching out to them, I think is a big thing. And I think you mentioned a very important point about allies as well. And there's a lot of research behind this that talks about, especially for young women, having an ally at work is one of the most important things to help them thrive in a working environment, right? And there's a lot of society, social structures behind this and conditioning behind this, etc. But having someone who can support you, especially when something new happens and you don't know how to react, for example, or you don't know how to respond to a situation, having an ally who can give you the right kind of advice is very important. So again, one is to identify an ally who can support you, and the other is to be an ally to others as well, right? Because once you are there, you also can be an ally to someone else. So looking at how you can be that ally also becomes very important.
Yeah, I mean, I had never thought about the mentorship in that perspective, to be honest, that, I need to have a specific doubt in mind and then approach someone. So that was some really great advice. I would really, really keep this in mind when I step into any work environment. So coming to the next topic, since the internship season is right around the corner, the level of anxiety and anticipation is equally high in most of our listeners. So can you tell us a few things to keep in mind when we appear for an interview? And also another important aspect would be how to deal with rejection when we come to face with it.
That is a topic I think we can talk for hours on, to be honest, Aditri. So dealing with anxiety and the pressure, especially during internship season, I think one of the big, I'll tell you how I would deal with anxiety, I guess, first of all. And it might seem like, very like small things to do, but I feel like small things really add up in the big, when you start doing so many things. And one is really to have a list of what you're really good at. Because when you go for these internships, when you go to meet companies or when you go for interviews and stuff like that, it's very hard to forget what you've done, especially when you're so stressed out or when you're so anxious. So always knowing, okay, here are some 3 points. Don't have more than 3 points because no one is going to be listening to more than 3 points also a lot of the time. But have the top 3 reasons why you need to be, offered this internship, or you are the right person for this internship, right? So take some time off to really reflect on what those top 3 points are. I think that is a huge thing. Structuring your communication is very important as well, and it's something that we don't think about too much. But if you look at all these really amazing leaders, I'm very inspired by Indra Nooyi. And if you look at any of her conversations, any of the interviews she's done, she always has a few points that she will make, and she'll make them very concisely. So she doesn't talk all over the place. She will say, okay, if she's responding to a question, she'll say, okay, I have 3 points as to why, and then she'll explain those 3 points, and that is it. And it makes it easy for the person who's listening to you to understand what you are saying as well. So structuring your communication, I think, becomes very important. And I think the third thing is really being authentic to who you are. Whether it is the way you dress or whether it is the way you present yourself in any kind of setup. I think that also really plays an important role in showing up for yourself. So it's important to say, this is who I am, right? Because all of us come from various parts of the world. We have our own, interests that can reflect in the way we present ourselves as well. So being aware of, okay, this is who I am and I'm very proud of who I am. This is me authentically. I think is also an important part of really showing up for these internship interviews and stuff like that. Dealing with rejection is not easy. And I don't think, any of us know the right, magic word to deal with rejection. But what I like to think of it as instead of rejection, I like to think of it as redirection. That, something didn't work out. There is a reason behind it, is what I like to think, because if something didn't work out, that means there's something else that's waiting to work out. There's something else, that has to happen, which hasn't happened yet. I'm a bit spiritual that way, I guess. But I like to believe that whatever is meant to come to you will come. That doesn't mean that you don't put in the hard work behind it. You try your best. And even after that, if something didn't come through, then there is something else out there that is waiting for you. It's what I like to think. Yeah.
That is like an amazing mindset to have, to believe that the best is always yet to come. And given the points about rejection that you mentioned, I'm sure we really need to keep this in mind, because interviews are coming up right next week, and I'm sure all our listeners will take notes from this. And like you mentioned, to approach people who have that particular skill set you want to inculcate. Coming to that, I would love to ask you that I really love the way you express yourself so clearly and concisely. And being a self-conscious person myself, I have attempted to inculcate this quality in me, expressing, structuring conversation and putting out points clearly. But then I have kind of failed because I tend to ramble. So do you have any pointers for people like me to help us articulate more clearly when we are speaking to anybody, a mentor or an interviewer?
So I think that's where saying those three main points becomes important. And I'll tell you why I say three. There's actually research behind this that says that as humans, our brains can't take in more information than 3 points at a time. So you start saying more points, we will forget what that first one is by the time we have gone to the last point. So always there's a whole magic behind that number of 3 that that research also talks about. So whenever you have to answer a question, don't try to give more than 3 reasons or 3 points behind whatever they are asking, right? 3 is more than enough. And also saying out, okay, you know what, I can think of 2 ways that I have used which have helped me to structure communication better. Point number 1 is that I think of answers that will make most sense to you as a listener. Point number 2 is that I try to keep it short. That is it, right? And I announce saying, okay, I have 2 points. Point number 1, point number 2, that's it. So for you as a listener, when you say, okay, I have 2 points, she's only going to talk about 2 points. Let me listen to those 2 points. And then you say the 2 points and that's it. And then that person knows that they can respond. One of the reasons we ramble is also because we are like, we have to say everything we have in our head, and we have to make sure they understand us the most, and we have to make sure that they like us also in the way we talk. We have so much pressure to the way we, to present ourselves nicely in the way we talk, that everything gets mixed up. But when we can make conversation structured in that sense and say, okay, I'm going to say only 3 points. Here are my 3 points, and we tell them, they can ask us a question and then we can respond to the question if they didn't understand. But we don't have to give them everything in our head just to make sure that they understand as well. So that's something that I've learned as well over the years. I think, you learn through trial and error and making a lot of mistakes. But yeah, always little is more in conversations. Yeah.
That is I'll be sure to make that magic list of 3 points and keep that in mind, so that I am never at a loss of words, as well as I don't, ramble on like I would usually. So coming to the last question, I think it's a kind of personal question that I would like to bring up here. So there are times, especially when something does not work out the way I had planned, that I actually sit and contemplate, okay, what I'm doing, does it actually make sense? Did I choose the wrong career altogether, or do I actually fit for this job that I am fighting for so badly. So, given that you have been a career guide to so many people, can you just give me some pointers on this as well?
I think it was an olden day way of looking at careers to think that I will know what I want when I'm 20 and I will stick with it for another 30 years of my life. I don't think that's the way the world has evolved, or we have also, or how we look at careers anymore. I do feel like careers are something that evolve as we grow older also, right? So just as you finish your degree, you feel like this is what I love doing. I love doing these things. You get into it. 5 years down the line, you realize, maybe not. Maybe this is not what I like doing. Let me do something a little bit differently. And I think that's perfectly fine. And to be honest, I think that's great. Because I don't think any of us should stick to only one thing, right? There are a few careers that are a calling. Like if you were to say, I want to become a doctor, that's a calling because you're aware of the kind of sacrifice that goes into it, the hard work, the amount of time you need to spend studying, practicing, all of that, right? There are certain careers that sometimes, they are for the rest of your life. But then I know a lot of doctors who dropped out and are now in like the technology space as well. So anyone can decide that they want to shift or change at any point in their lives, and I think that's perfectly fine. Because I very strongly believe that we make the right decision for us at that point, given the amount of information we have. After 5 years, we have even more information, and then we realize, maybe this was not the right choice for me, and we change. But at every point in our lives, we make the right decision for us at that time. And that's what's important. When it comes to also looking at what do I want from my career, I think it's even more important to look at who do I want to become in my life? And then see if your career can help you to get there. So instead of saying, I want to, and I used to do this, I used to say, I want to be the CEO of a company by the time I'm 40, was what I used to say. But then I realized that what is the point I want to make by being a CEO, right? How does that help anyone? And that's when I shifted that perspective to who do I want to be as Divya at every stage of my life? And who is the Divya that I am proud of? And then I realized I can be that Divya in any role. I don't need to be the CEO of a company. A career is important because it gives you financial independence. It gives you something that, you can stand on. It gives you a certain sense of identity. All of that is important, but it is not your whole identity. So I think shifting your perspective from saying, how do I make the right decision for my career, to who do I want to become? Who is that person that I want to be, who I'll be proud of? And then looking at, how will my career support me to do that is important. And for each of us, it's a different answer, right? It could be that you will be the most proud of if you become the head of engineering in some big company. It could be that. And that's a valid goal. Then what do you need to do today to help you to get there, if that's your goal, right? And I think that is a more longer term perspective to how you can look at your career.
Yeah, that perspective, I think we as Indians especially really lack that, thinking that if I choose to go down a different career path 5 years down the line, then it's like I wasted the last 5 years I had. But I kind of disagree with that, because I think we definitely picked up some skills on the way that will be useful to me for
and if you look at
the next
anyone who is successful, and I say successful with the air quotes, but according to the general world, they're successful. They would have had a very interesting, graph in terms of their career. Like I started in research, and now I'm in a completely different kind of space. I started in a different country. Now I'm working in a different country. But, when I started off my career, actually, I worked in a call center. I have worked as a food critic. I have worked as an editor. I've done so many different roles in my life, and all of them still help me. At one point in my life, I was supporting someone to design websites. And at that point, I hated it because I was like, why do I even need to design a website at this point? But now, in my current role, because of what I did like some 15 years ago, I'm able to say, okay, this website does not look good. We need to change this. And it's a skill that I got because of my work 15 years ago, which has helped me today.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I think no skills that you've developed by real experience actually goes to waste. So, this was a wonderful conversation with you, ma'am. The tips that you shared with us, I think they're going to last like a lifetime for us, of valuable advice for us. So, do you have any closing thoughts for our listeners before we
comments is, first of all, good luck to everyone who is listening, who has interviews next week. I'm sure this is going to be a life-changing experience for you. And embrace all the anxiety, all the fear, everything. Just look at it as a experience that's going to teach you so much about yourself. I'm sure you all are going to go great. And I think another last thought that I have is really always look at how you can support another person in their journey as well. Always look at how you can be that kind of ally or someone, who supports another young woman or another person to really come up in their lives, because the sisterhood really makes a difference. And I hope you all experience the power of the sisterhood as well in your own journeys.
Once again, ma'am, it's been our pleasure to have this conversation.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.